of the month of June, which is good news and bad news. It's bad news because it means we only have 2 months of summer left. And I don't know where you are, but summer just kicked in and it is hot. It is definitely hot outside. Um, okay, so let's just do a quick review over some of the things that we have spoken about. Um, we tried to uncover some of the essential reasons for the hatred of the Jewish people and um, determine, excuse me, just admit this person, and to determine what is the reason for this old hatred. We tried to understand 3,700 years of Jewish history of anti-Semitism. We wanted to understand why. Uh, hold on a second. All right, why this is what's unique about being Jewish that may lead to anti-Semitism. We spoke about the persecution, the ongoing hate, the physical attacks against the Jewish people that are unique and different than the attacks that are far beyond just bigotry, far beyond the circumstances that other hate people that have experienced hate have gone through. Then we kind of talked about the different principles and theories of anti-Semitism, and then showed that these explanations at best fall short of a complete understanding of what it is, and we still don't have full clarity. Now, the people hate a member of other groups is very normal and common in human history, but the universality and the depth of hatred for the Jews is qualitatively different, completely different. There was someone by the name of Reverend Edward H. Flannery from the National Conference of Catholic Bishops. And he said like this, he said, hatred of the Jew is the greatest hatred in human history. Okay, now, what I want to do with you, I think we need 2 classes for this, and then we're going to stop anti-Semitism and only have positive conversations for the rest of the summer. It's very painful to talk about anti-Semitism for me. If hatred of the different or other is a universal human trait, the reason the Jews are hated more than any other group is simply because that we are the ultimate other. Now, anti-Semitism will be, what I'm going to try to show you is the function of the Jews' task to bring God and divine values into the world. Reverend Flannery also said that it was Judaism that brought the concept of God-given universal moral law into the world. And the Jews carry that burden of God in history. And for this, they have never been forgiven, which is so true. And on an unconscious level, we're the ones that are responsible for bringing Christianity and Islam, Judaism, the monotheistic faiths into the world. We are the pallbearers of those ideas. And therefore, we're going to go ahead and brunt some of that responsibility. So what I want to do is like this. I want to show that the traditional Jewish understanding of anti-Semitism, what it is, what do we think? We spoke about outside factors, sociological, psychological, social factors for anti-Semitism. I want to spend a little bit of time, is there any sources for Jewish anti-Semitism within Judaism? And the second I want to do is I want to end by searching for ways to kind of putting it to an end. So let's kind of like just jump right in, I guess. Okay. To understand the root cause of anti-Semitism, you have to understand the Torah's explanations, including prophecies that foretell expressions of anti-Semitism. We're going to find that the paradigms for all types of anti-Semitism are contained in the Torah itself. And they're even expanded and elucidated in the Talmud. Our commentators had no shortage of expression of trying to explain what it is and how it works. Someone by the name of the Netziv, right, or Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, he wrote a massive, important commentary on the Torah. And he has an essay which you should all read called She'erit Yisrael, the remnant of Israel. And it's published in his commentary on Shir HaShirim. And there is a recent adaptation of his essay that was recently published. If you want it, I'm happy to send it to you. There's this idea of Ma'aseh Avot Siman Labanim, right? This idea of how the actions of the father are assigned to the children. And therefore, all we have to do is look at the experiences of the Avot, look at the experiences of the patriarchs, the matriarchs in the Torah, and that will kind of give us an inkling as to what's going to happen in our own reality, in our own world. Okay, so we're going to do that a little bit. We're going to look at how anti-Semitism is directed at God via the Jewish people. We're also going to look at Jewish values, and then we're going to figure out how to get rid of this and so on and so forth. So every event in the Torah, every experience that is mentioned in the Torah is a opportunity to take a glimpse into what may happen in the future. So all of Jewish history can be understood from the stories of the Bible. That's our Mesorah. That's our unique tradition that we have. That everything that happens in the Torah, you will see it happen much later. You have someone by the name of the Ramban, Nachmanides, and he says like this. This is coming from Abraham. He says that when Abraham passed the land of Canaan until the site of Shechem, V'yavor Abraham be'eretz ad makom Shechem. That's the pasuk. Now Shechem didn't exist yet as a city. But the Torah talks about Shechem as a city. So how does that work? Like Abraham passes a city that doesn't exist. Well, how does that work? How do we reconcile that? So what does Ramban say? He says to inform you that our sages are going to talk to us about this idea that Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are going to experience these things later in Shechem. Okay, this is based on the Midrash Tanchuma, that all the events that our ancestors encountered are going to somehow play itself out later in the future. And therefore, the Torah vividly describes experiences of the forefathers and their journeys, the dig dwellings, everything they go through, which even though may sound somewhat repetitive and inconsequential, they're all written to teach us about future events. So we're going to see that anti-Semitism has been experienced throughout Jewish history, and the first person to experience anti-Semitism is, anyone know? Who was the first person to experience anti-Semitism? Abraham, the first Jew. He experiences it. Where do we see this? We find this actually quoted by Harambam, Maimonides, in the laws of Hilchot Avodah Zarah. He says like this. He says that after Abraham recognized God, again, Maimonides wrote this about 700 years ago, 800, almost 900 years ago now. He says that after Abraham recognizes God's existence, he begins to challenge the idol worshippers of Ur Kasdim. And he argues with all the idol worshippers, saying that there's only one path to truth, and that all the things that they're doing is a waste of time. When Abraham's ideas gained recognition and people started like saying, wow, he's making great points, he's making these amazing logical arguments, he was arrested, and Nimrod wanted to kill him. He was miraculously saved. Remember the story, he's thrown into the fiery furnace. He somehow comes out, and Abraham comes out as this powerful voice that champions God in the world. Now, it's interesting that Nimrod is also known as Amraphel, who is he's the guy that actually threw Abraham into the actual furnace. Now, Amraphel comes to the word Amar Pol, right? I'm telling the world to fall. He's also the guy that builds the Tower of Babel, right? He's the same guy. What does Rashi say? Rashi says that Amraphel began his kingdom through a rebellion. What do he want to do? He wants to get rid of the idea of monotheism on earth. He is the forefather of polytheism. That's what he created. He gets the world to kind of buy into this idea that everyone could be a god. There is no God. Now, Nimrod engineers a worldwide rebellion because this is his way of creating a power vacuum. Now, Yitzchak, Ishmael, and Abimelech. Okay, Abram and his wife and Sarah are childless. Sarah asks Abraham to marry her as a maidservant. right? Hagar, he marries Hagar, who was given to her by Abimelech, by Paro. Subsequently, Hagar gives birth to Ishmael. Later, God tells Abraham that he and Sarah are going to have a child called Yitzchak. Okay, and the Jewish covenant will come through him. Ishmael acts immorally. He and Yitzchak have a really bad relationship, and they're fighting about the inheritance. And this threatens the relationship between these two kids because Ishmael is ready to kill Yitzchak. Concern for Yitzchak's welfare, Sarah, with God's backing, says to Abraham, I want you to send away your son, Ishmael and Hagar, get rid of them. What does God say? Shema b'kol ishtecha. Gentlemen, sometimes we gotta listen to our wives. Sometimes, not all the time, most of the time. I hope my wife's not watching. I'll get in trouble for that later. Over here, Ishmael is sent away. Okay, Hagar is sent away. Ishmael's descendants give birth to Islam, claiming that God rescinds his covenant with the Jewish people and reestablishes it with the Muslims, with the Arabs. Okay. Now, Yitzchak marries Rivka. They have twins, Yaakov and, that's right, Esav. They encounter a famine, which forces them to relocate, and then they go in the land of the Philistines. Yitzchak becomes extremely prosperous, very wealthy, and the local king, Abimelech, becomes jealous of Yitzchak's wealth and tells him to leave the area. Okay? Chavetz Chaim says that jealousy of Jewish strength is another paradigm of anti-Semitism. Why is he asking him to leave? What's the big deal? There's a lot of other wealthy people. Why is he jealous of him? So Chavetz Chaim says that this is another paradigm of anti-Semitism. Now, Yaakov and Esav struggle over who deserves to be the rightful heir of the Jewish people. Yaakov ends up purchasing the firstborn rights, which Esav, we know, despised. Okay? The struggle between Yaakov and Esav lead to the Jewish nation manifesting themselves again. And Yitzchak senses he's nearing the end of his life, and he wants to give his firstborn child the blessings to Esav. What happens? Rivka disguises Yaakov, sends him ahead of Esav to receive the blessings, and since she feels that Esav is unworthy of the blessings, Yaakov is deserving, and she helps him do this. She helps him prepare everything that she needs to have, and everything he needs to have with him so that he could go ahead and pass himself off as Esav. Now, even though Yitzchak himself affirmed that he gave the blessings to Yaakov after he was cognizant of what transpired with the switch, Esav harbors tremendous amount of hatred towards his brother. Now, since Yaakov is a symbol of the Jewish people, right, because he eventually gives birth to the 12 tribes, Esav, along with all of his descendants, are viewed as the archetypical anti-Semites with whom the Jewish people will eternally contend with. Irony is that we believe that Esav, which is the West, Ishmael, which is the East, all hate us because we're all brothers. It's kind of like a weird thing. Like we're all related and we all hate each other, but at our core, we're all family. But each one, Ishmael is a breakaway of, Yitzchak, and Yaakov is a breakaway of Esav. And these two counterparts fill the world with people that hate us. So there's more. Wait, it gets better. What's another example of this? Yaakov and Lavan, right? Yitzchak and Rivka then send Yaakov away for two purposes: to escape from Esav and to travel to Haran to marry Abraham's extended family. On the way to Haran, Yaakov escapes by being murdered by his Esav's son Eliphaz. Eliphaz was sent by his father Esav to murder Yaakov, but he wasn't able to go through with it because he feels some kind of affinity, some kind of a connection to Yaakov. Now, because he grew up in Yitzchak's home, and Yaakov tells Eliphaz, take all my money, take all my assets, making me poor. Someone who's poor has no money is like he's dead. If you're poor, you're blind, it's like you're dead. So you take my money, and that's compared to death. Yaakov comes to Haran empty-handed. He's destitute, meets his future wife, Rachel, and he's taken to meet the prospective father-in-law, Lavan. Okay, now he has no assets. he negotiates an arrangement with Lavan to work to marry Rachel. Gentlemen, this is a horrible idea. Okay, you're going in to get married. Do not start a job working for your father-in-law. You're going to get in trouble. It's going to come back to haunt you. Okay, learn from the story. Pay attention, my friends. So, when Yaakov recognizes that that he's going to do this deal where he's working for his father-in-law for 7 years to marry Rachel, he realized that that Lavan is a schemer, and that Lavan is going to scheme him into something that he's not even sure how bad it's going to be. So, despite Yaakov suspecting his scheme, he is still duped, and Rachel is swiped out, and he marries instead Leah. The custom of unveiling the bride came from this particular moment. We're supposed to be smarter than that, okay? Hashtag you can do better. Hashtag you should have known. Hashtag never trust a liar. So Yaakov makes the mistake, and he has to pays for it. He ends up working for another 7 years for Rachel. Okay. Now, Yaakov's interaction with Lavan foretells future anti-Semitism, right? In fact, on the second most universally observed festival, which is after Yom Kippur, which is Pesach, what do we say on Pesach? We say that Lavan bikesh laharos hakol. He wanted to destroy everything, everyone. We say that Lavan was worse than Paro. That Paro himself only wanted to kill the boys, but Lavan wanted to destroy everything. Okay, we say that if it wasn't for God saving us here, we would have been destroyed. Since anti-Semitism is such a constant in Jewish history, I could find dozens of sources throughout the Torah literature that describe it. Right? We see in Haggadah itself that Lavan's hatred for the Jewish people, for Yaakov, is anti-Semitism. He's the father-in-law of Yaakov. Right? Lavan is regarded as the best archetype representative of all anti-Semitism. And therefore, if you really want to understand it, take a look at that whole interaction with Yaakov and his father-in-law, and you'll understand anti-Semitism at its core. Okay. Now, so this is the essay of Reb Naftali Berlin. I want to try to go through. I gave you that background, but let's go through this essay over here together, and let's see if we can walk away with this and another piece of moral. You're going to love this piece. Ready? It goes like this. He says, the Midrash tells us, Maaseh Avot Siman Labanim. Okay? The Ramban tells us this means that the stories of the lives of the Avot are there to symbolize and detail future historical events that are going to happen to the Jewish people. Okay? Jacob coexisted with his father-in-law Lavan for 20 years. Relative stability until an unexpected turn of events. Lavan has this hatred for Yaakov. It explodes. He can't hold it anymore. And our Chachamim tell us that, Lavan is the worst anti-Semite. Okay, and his relationship with Yaakov is viewed as the archetype of the hatred between Jews and their anti-Semitic neighbors forever. Now, historically, anti-Semitism has always expressed itself in two ways. Ready? Number one, through jealousy. Jealousy of Jewish wealth, suspicion of theft, and second, in the form of hatred for our faith or hatred for the service of our God. Of the two, the more prominent and at times most significant to the superficial observer has been jealousy directed at our economic success. People hate our success. Hatred of our religion has generally been present in more subtle manners. And truth is, in many ways, I would argue that was for a much longer period of time. It came through religion. But the last 500 years, certainly, it's been all about our monetary success. Doesn't make any sense. How do we keep popping up? Why don't we disappear? Why are we still here? People have spoken about us. There's more hatred written about us as a people than any other group of people on planet Earth. Come on, that's awesome. Like, people are still talking about us for thousands of years. We've got to be doing something, right? So, for example, now, we never find Lavan making overt statements against Jacob's beliefs and religious practices. It's never clear, right? It's only our Chachamim's insight into the biblical text which tell us where his religious hatred began, right? So we said, Arami Oved Avi v'Yarad Mitzrayma. The Armenian wanted to destroy my father, Yaakov, who migrated to Egypt, right? The word Oved puzzled the rabbis because it's written in the present tense. And therefore, it's written in a way where it's continual. There's a continuous process of destruction whose goal is to ensure that no aspect of Jacob will remain. Okay? There's a gradual destruction here. However, when Yaakov decides to leave, Laban has no choice but to try to commit genocide. Okay? And that's why he has a sudden outburst. What does he say? He says, I have the power to wreak evil upon all of you. Right? Now, had Laban been just jealous of Yaakov's money, he would have just taken it. Right? But that's not what he says. He says, Bikesh la'kor et hakol, that he wished to uproot everything. Lavan would not have been satisfied with just taking his money. He wanted to completely annihilate Yaakov, both physical and spiritual, everything about Yaakov he wanted to get rid of. Lavan wanted Yaakov to assimilate, okay? But Yaakov wasn't willing to assimilate. Yaakov's 14 stay with Lavan, right, stretches to 21 years, and still Yaakov does not assimilate. He hates Yaakov for not buying into his ideas. Gentlemen, the second lesson you learn from here is that whenever your father-in-law is offering you something over long periods of time, he always has a second agenda. He's trying to sell you on something else. So whatever you're committing to, make sure it's for short stints, not long stints. Okay, not always have the strength of Yaakov to overcome that kind of brainwashing. Now, when Yaakov returns to the land of Canaan from Laban and with his family, he prepares for a confrontation with whom? Esav. And he escapes that, right? He understands he gets the blessing of Yitzchak, but he's still afraid of war. Yaakov divides his family into two camps, so that if Esav were to annihilate one group, the second group would survive. What is the cause of Yaakov's concern? Especially if God promised him protection prior to leaving Haran. So the Maharal says like this: why should Yaakov fear Esav if God promised Yaakov that he would be fine? So he says like this: the Gemara says that the reason Yaakov was fearful that maybe Esav was someone who was still involved in his kibbutz avim, and since maybe he made a sin, maybe he was vulnerable to attack. Yaakov represents the Jewish people. Esav is the paradigm for anti-Semitism by the other nations. Yaakov is teaching us that transgression can make us vulnerable to anti-Semitic expressions. That when we don't do what we're meant to do, we end up experiencing anti-Semitism. So once back in Canaan, there's a massive regional famine that sets in, and there isn't enough food for Yaakov's family, right? This is reminiscent of what happened to Abimelech and his resentment of Yitzchak's power. Yaakov tells his family not to call attention to their assets, hide your money. This is the idea that even though you have all the money, don't build the biggest house on the block. So like deal is like the exact opposite of like what we've done in history. We've never built mansions like that before. We live comfortably, but we never wanted to call attention to the world by the physical things that we own. So American Jewish expression of power and wealth, in the long run, I think will come back to bite us. I think it's a mistake. It's better to live humbly than to live extravagantly. Have what you need. Don't build ridiculous mansions that calls attention to you. It just doesn't look good for us. It's never a good. I have a whole theory about why, but never a good thing. Live comfortably, but live modestly. Okay, so Yaakov tells his family not to call attention to their assets and make their way down to Egypt. Okay, now they end up in Egypt, and we know the story of what happens when they end up in Egypt. Okay, they end up finding Yosef and so on and so forth. Okay, this is another form of anti-Semitism when the Egyptians realize that the Jews are going to outnumber, the Egyptians. We're afraid of their power and their size. Let's devise a plan to enslave them. Next, you have Bilam, right? Bilam is the greatest non-Jewish prophet. We just read about him a couple of weeks ago. He lived at the time of, last week actually, he lived at the time of Moshe, and he had tremendous amount of jealousy for the Jewish people. We see it in all of his blessings and so on and so forth. Balak and Bilam were afraid of the Jewish conquest. They were aware of the strength of the Jewish people. They were aware of their spiritual connection. And regardless, they still go ahead and try to curse the Jews. Okay, so Bilam recognizes that there's a unique power of the Jewish people, and he can't overcome them. He can't curse them. So what does he do? He even tries to give them evil eye by saying, Ma tovu alecha Yaakov, look how beautiful. He tries to do everything he can. It doesn't work. He's frustrated that he can't break into these people. By the way, if you pay closer attention to the Parsha, the way in which you overcome ayin hara and curses is by building strong families. If your family is strong and you have a tight net relationship with kids and parents, there's no power in the world that can break that. No power in the world. And this has been our secret. You know how we survive as people, as Jews? Pay attention. It's by building strong families. That's how we survive. How do we build strong families? Through education, through learning, through imparting values, by building close connections, time, effort, energy, learning, relationship building. All the money in the world is useless if you don't have children who are tied into you. If your kids don't see you as part of their unique journey, we fail them as parents. And children, if you're listening, the children here, you know I'm talking to, you have a unique opportunity to achieve some level of clarity and greatness by, learning from your parents, by recognizing the mistakes, recognizing the great things that they've accomplished, and then learning and asking why they're doing the things that they do. Where does their belief come from? What is that strength? Where does that conviction? What is that? And it's something that you're going to have to learn to figure out for yourselves, because it's not going to come through osmosis anymore. The generation of osmosis, my friends, it's over. We were lucky. When I say we, I'm saying people my age and older, we're lucky that we were born at a time where we could absorb faith from our parents and our grandparents. The world was a different place. Today, if we are not learning about our faith, if we don't take ownership in our beliefs, we're going to lose it. We're too distracted. We're too busy. We're too ADD. We don't have the focus. We don't have the attention span to deal with this stuff anymore. The 16th century Kabbalist, Reb Chaim Vital, he wrote a book called Otzrot Chaim, right? He says that like Bilam, Esav too was jealous of the spiritual aspiration and accomplishments of the Avot. And that drove him to hate Yaakov. When you have a kid in the class who's like a goody two shoes, he's just a smart guy. He doesn't study hard, but he's always doing really well. He's got everything going for him. He's handsome. He's successful. He's really bright. Everyone likes him. You love to hate that guy. We're that guy. We're the guy that people look at and like, holy cow, how do these freaks do this? They have these weird laws that prevent them from like what would appear to be, having opportunity for success. They have strange dietary rules. They have these things called Shabbat. They have all these family purity stuff going on. How do these people find happiness? How does that discipline bring happiness? Because I'm not disciplined like they are. So we're a constant reminder, just like Yaakov was and Yitzchak was to both Ishmael and Esav, that you know what? It's only through the hard life that you'll find happiness. You could lead a hedonistic life and you'll have what we call counterfeit pleasure. You can go ahead and find happiness with short-term solutions. But long-term, we play the long game because we understand that real success and happiness is not about what I do right now. It's about how I prepare for tomorrow. And you want to understand where our financial success come from? Our financial success come from the fact that we think about how do we create wealth for the next generation? How do I preserve wealth for tomorrow? Not only for me and my children, but for my community and my people. Most people don't think like that. Most people think about, I'm going to spend all my money and buy myself a nice Mercedes, and they live in their Mercedes. What a bad investment. You're buying a depreciating asset. The world outside is a different kind of place. We have so much to teach to the world. We could teach the world that it's through success, discipline, and happiness, hard work, that we as a people can make the world a greater place. But not through these ridiculous notions of like communism and socialism, and even capitalism to an extreme is a bad thing. There is something to be said about, the 25 richest people in the world. It might be too much. There is limitations. The fact that Jeff Bezos' wife gave more charity in the last 3 years than Jeff Bezos did in his whole life is shame on Jeff Bezos. It's chutzpah. The purpose of getting money is to give it back. The purpose of wealth and power is to protect the weak and the needy. You're given that responsibility. It's not about just holding on to it so you can build your empire forever. We have to be thinking about the world around us. And this is what we do as Jews. So on some level, anti-Semitism, the cause root of anti-Semitism, I'm going to argue, comes from our spiritual aspirations. Our spiritual aspirations is the root cause of our anti-Semitism. That is, whether you're religious or not religious, doesn't matter to me. I often get the question, well, how do Jews take credit for Albert Einstein? How do Jews take credit for all the Nobel Prize winners that weren't religious? You know my answer is? Albert Einstein would have never have been who he was if he didn't have religious grandparents. Okay, Viktor Frankl would have never been who he was if he didn't have parents who were religious. All of these people, everyone, including Spinoza, who was one of the classical Jews who rejected his faith from a philosophical place, he would not have been who he was had he not come from a very deep religious reality. And I say this like this: if you're Jewish and you're watching this, okay, and you still identify as being Jewish, the only reason why you are here right now is because either your parents, grandparents, or certainly great-grandparents were religious people. And if they weren't, the odds of you still identifying to be Jewish is slim to none. It's about 0.7%. If your grandfather was not Orthodox, was not living a life of Judaism, you and I would not be having this conversation. You'd already be assimilated. You'd be gone. How do we ensure the next generation maintains that connection, my friends? We have to become more. Don't settle for less. Don't allow yourself to settle into Western ideas. Don't worry about anti-Semitism. Okay, worry about being the best expression of yourselves, and you'll find yourself staring down the barrel of success. You'll see yourself having the nachat of children that are doing what they're supposed to do. So let's just go over this particular piece, and then God willing, we'll continue next week. So from the beginning of the very beginning of Judaism, when Abraham discovers monotheism, he was hated as a Jew because he finds God. Nimrod is the first Jew hater in the Torah, and he tried everything he could to destroy Abraham and his monotheistic ideas, but instead it actually sets him out to popularity because he becomes the first person that is able to overcome this king, this despot, who ends up trying to destroy Abraham. As a result of it, he becomes more popular, his ideas flourish. Ishmael was the patriarch of the Ishmaelites, who eventually establishes Islam, which is a religion, unfortunately, that I believe has an openly stated anti-Semitic sentiments inside of it. Esav, who hated Yaakov for receiving their father's blessing instead of himself, is the archetype anti-Semite with whom the Jewish people are eternally fighting with. We're eternally contending with him. Lavan is considered by Pesach, according to the Haggadah, as having sought to uproot the Jewish people in its entirety, like Esav. He is the second archetype of anti-Semitism. Bilam, considered the greatest of prophets of the Jews, did not let his belief in God stopping him. Can you imagine that? He believes in God, but his own belief in God does not stop him from his persistent attempt to curse the Jewish people. Proof that anti-Semitism is irrational hatred. How do you believe in God and try to curse the people using God's own words? It makes no sense. So Bezrat Hashem, what we're going to do next week is I'm going to expand on these ideas, and I'll talk a little bit about how we can get rid of it. Okay, can it be eradicated? Maybe not. but to be continued. Stay tuned for part 2, God willing, next Wednesday. Have an amazing week. It's Wednesday, so I can say Shabbat Shalom to everybody. Looking forward to seeing you soon again. Take care, everybody. Thanks for listening.